Today, Vince Burruano joins me from Vince Burruano Consulting Services, where he helps business leaders improve sales performance as a fractional sales leader, coach, and consultant. Before launching his firm, he spent nearly 30 years leading sales teams in the moving and office technology industries, including serving as VP of Commercial Sales at JK Moving and authoring A Daily Dose of Sales Wisdom. In this conversation, we dive into the human element in sales, hiring for outcomes, how AI and RFP culture can accelerate commoditization, and how leaders can better protect and leverage the value of their B2B sales teams. Vince, welcome to Revenue Unscripted. It is a privilege to have you here.
Jennica, thank you so much for the invitation. I've been excited, waiting for the opportunity to chat with you. I know in our kind of leading up conversations, we've gone down rabbit holes, but we've had a lot of fun. So,
Oh my goodness, yes. I was just kicking myself for having not started this recording earlier because even in just our first few minutes together, we were going down rabbit holes of handwriting. I mean, the importance of handwriting. You and I are so on the same page. Wow, that was not a pun intended, but we're so on the same page with this. And can you tell our audience what you just told me about goals?
I'd be happy to. So I was just at a conference speaking, and tis the season, right? We're still in January when it's goal setting time, and I was referring back to some research I had read that said you're writing goals, handwritten goals, and posting them up where you can see them on a daily basis is much better than typing them or recording them verbally or anything else. And what's really interesting about it is that one of the suggestions I gave to people is to handwrite them even on an index card and go ahead and put them on the mirror in your bathroom. So whether you're curling your hair, which I don't do very often, or brushing
I
your
This
teeth,
takes a while. Yeah, this will take a
yes,
while.
or brushing your teeth or just washing your hands, you'll have a morning reminder of your goals and that you can help keep them top of mind. And they said that the people who do that have a much better rate of accomplishment than those who type them or don't look at them frequently. It's a combination of things. Not a magic bullet, but certainly it'll help your odds, tilt them in your favor.
That's amazing because I know and my kids attend a school where they still teach handwriting and they really emphasize cursive writing. And I mean, I was a business major in college, not a classics major. So like anything old, I was a little bit like, wait, what? We're doing handwriting here? And it sounded interesting, but I didn't understand the magic involved until I dug into the connection that happens in the brain. I mean, it's like little fireworks going off and connections being made when the hand is writing the script and the letters are connected. There's something magical about when the letters are connected because I was always kind of a block writer. I learned cursive many decades ago, but I tend to prefer block. But handwriting with those connected letters fires things in the brain that so when you said that about the goals, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense.
It does. And if you don't mind, I'll share a little tidbit about something that I do when I'm coaching sales professionals where they're going on appointments. And I know that we have all this great tech. We have, laptops and different gizmos that you can use. But I still encourage people to have a kind of like one of these notepads and to bring it with them to meetings. And what I've told people or suggested to people is that when you're meeting with someone, particularly up front, and you're going to have a conversation, you're getting ready to let them tell you and answer some questions. A technique I learned is to always ask them, "Would it be okay if I took some notes?" And I find it useful to write my notes in cursive because I can write faster than block print.
So true.
But it's really interesting the psychology around asking permission. So in the 35 years that I've either been doing this or coaching people to do this, no one has ever said no. But it's
Right.
amazing. Two things I believe, I don't have scientific proof, but I have kind of proof of experience. Two things happen. One is people talk a little bit slower because they know that you're taking notes.
Oh, ho, ho.
And the other thing that they do is they tend to be more thoughtful because they know that you're taking notes. So not only do you get better information, you get it in a stream, a thought stream that sometimes is a little bit um, more conducive to having in-depth conversations because they know that you're taking notes and this is important. And when they're done speaking, you can always say that was fantastic and thank them and say, would you mind if I went back through? I want to make sure I captured everything. And you can go and hit some highlights, which will show them that you were paying attention and you weren't simply listening until you had the opportunity to speak, but you were listening for understanding, which
Cool.
drives such a better relationship.
That does, and it emphasizes who's the most important person in the room at that moment too,
It does.
which is
That's a great point.
awesome.
Great point.
Yeah, their insights are more important than anything we can tell. I love that. That's wise. I know when it comes to asking questions, it's that's always an area where we want to make sure to remember to ask permission also. And so whenever we're coaching people, whether they're executives or frontline salespeople, you got to get permission to ask questions. And it's funny how easy it is to miss that
It is.
when you're
Yeah,
about to do this. And it's interesting also the asking permission to take notes. You're right, because I've never thought about it actively, but I've seen that play out exactly what you're describing. There's an intentionality to the discussion after that, and it's it makes the other person feel good, rightly. What they're saying is important, and it really shines the spotlight on their importance. And it's not just about whatever I think I'm bringing.
that's right. The other reason I like it is that if you set up a laptop, and some people are very proficient typers, you're putting something between you and the person you're trying to build a relationship with. And
True.
even if you have one of these electronic tablets or something like that, you know, I don't know. Sometimes, will an email pop up, a message, something else that'll distract you, and you would never want them to think that you don't have their full attention. With a legal pad, there's nothing that's popping up except like an ink blot. So you don't have
Yes.
to worry about that.
Oh, it's so funny how even here we're a quarter of the way through the 21st century and we're seeing advancement and progress multiplying around us. And yet it's some of those old school classic methods of interacting as humans that still win today. I mean, we're humans interacting with other humans at the end of the day. And it would be easy to throw that out, forgetting that that can still win you points or the business, even here a quarter of the way through the 21st century.
It totally does. I have a friend who's in direct mail, and direct mail's gone through an interesting history in which there's not as much anymore. But this is what's so interesting in the world of email and text and everything else. People find it very easy to delete that. And anymore, people who get a letter and hand addressed letter, not a laser print, but hand, are more apt to open it and take a look at what's inside. And so it's a great
Yes.
way to reach out to people and sending thank you cards, handwritten thank you cards,
Oh my goodness, yes.
and
That's
still
that is
still
so
important.
important. Hmm.
I,
Even I've realized, because I was raised to do the handwritten thank you card thing, and now that I'm connecting with everybody virtually, I realize I don't have people's mailing addresses. Like
I
I
know
don't capture them, and I need to start doing that because at some point I do want to drop people a note because it's what a way to differentiate yourself in the noise of the marketplace.
it is. I still share a story when I was God, I was like in my early 20s. I was selling engineering equipment,
Okay.
basically blueprint machines, machines to make copies of technical drawings. And I had met with this gentleman, and we were not the number one brand at the time. We were like the number two. And I was talking to him, and I was getting ready to make a $7,000 or $8,000 sale. So back in the day, it was a decent little sale. And he said to me, "Well, I've thought about you, and I thought about your competitor, and I've decided to buy from you." And I said, "Oh, that's fantastic! Thank you so much." He said, "Would you like to know why?" I said, "Absolutely. Always would love to learn." He goes, "You send thank you notes." He said, "After the first time you came to see me, you sent the thank you note. When I came to your office to look at the equipment, you sent me a thank you note." He says, it tells me that your mother did a good job raising you and you paid attention. And so we laughed, and I said, well, it probably won't shock you to learn that my mother took me shopping for the cards. And he goes, no, not at all. He goes, I'm actually glad to hear that. It makes me feel even better about my decision to buy from you. So
That's
I know that was a long
outstanding.
time ago, but yeah, isn't that amazing? You never know why people do what they do, why they buy. It was nice for him to share, but it really tells you sometimes the things that we think are little things are so much more impactful than we originally consider.
Yes, it's so true. And that's for us at Slattery Sales Group, it's kind of like a cornerstone of what we do. My dad is a very humble, he has a very humble approach in what he does. And a lot of our work, I mean, he started it 40 years ago. And so over the years, I've watched him work, and then I've worked very closely with him, and we're coaching salespeople and we're training them. And we're also coaching executives who are running these organizations. The tiniest little point of nuance, wording, tone matters intensely. And sometimes it's the little things like, you know, we came out of the 20th century, which was like the century of self help books. And every self help book told you, you know, how to exude confidence in life. And in sales, in a lot of interactions in the marketplace, that very confidence can be an Achilles heel because you're hitting the marketplace saying, I'm amazing. I know more than you do about something. I mean, some kind of approach. It's like, oh, we need to dial that back a little bit. It's such a small point of nuance to hit the marketplace rather with position of humility rather than I am amazing. You probably have a problem. I know more about it than you do, and I could probably fix it for you. You're welcome. Like
Yes,
that may not open the doors you're hoping it will open, but a little dialing down and being human and the humility to put the other person first in the conversation. I mean, oh, the business results that can come from that are gorgeous.
it is. It's interesting because I think there's an interesting mix. They're not mutually exclusive, confidence and
Right,
humility.
right.
Like you know, when I'm coaching newer players, I explain to them that you'll get um, confidence when you have competence in what you're talking about, but that doesn't exclude the idea that somebody will always know a little more karate. So a little humility when you're working with people to see, God, that I never thought about that. That's a great observation, or leaning into that and asking them, can you explain that to me? You know, can you share more with me about that? Will always help you because if you approach it, I'm sure your father thinks this way as well, from a point of view is how can I be helpful rather than how can I sell you something. There might be
Yes.
times that I can help you that has nothing to do with you buying today, but you'll buy from me forever because I help you. And you have that approach versus I've got to make a sale because I want to make a dollar.
Yes. Oh, the prospects can smell that a mile away. Oh, so I was gonna save this question towards the end, but this is just so juicy. I gotta
Sure.
bring it up earlier.
Yeah.
We've been talking about the human side, the humanity piece, and as you and I both know, in a lot of organizations, the CEO is hoping that when it comes to the go to market strategy, there will be less and less and less of those pesky, expensive things called humans as part of that strategy. And I have heard probably every possible iteration of the death of a salesman being predicted from way back in the day when the website was new all the way to AI today. And much to the chagrin of many leaders, somehow we still need salespeople. But we're observing, and you and I have talked about this before, we're observing that with the rise of AI, humans are using AI, they're wielding AI, they're leveraging it to go out of the marketplace and reach humans, sell to humans more effectively. So they're using AI to write their outreach language, they're using AI to find prospects, do their research. But what happens when we as humans have to sell to AI? You brought that up in our last conversation. I would love to have you unpack that because that's a pretty bold position. And I think it's on the horizon. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's on the horizon. Tell us about
Yes.
this.
Yes. I was on a call with some other, you know, really very smart people about sales and the future, and they were talking about this, and I was asking some questions around it because you're right. AI is great, and it's gonna change the world, and it's already changing the world. Unfortunately, to some degree, it's one of these things where because we can, we do, but we haven't really asked, should we, and to what extent. But I can't control those things. So what I like to focus on is trying to find a way to use AI so that we can do our job better. We can be more efficient, more timely, be more successful. A lot of companies, I think, are really embracing AI from a buying perspective because the fact of the matter is that the younger generations, if they could avoid talking to sales professionals at all, they would. They're
Yep.
most comfortable buying things off their phone at a website based on social proof, reviews and other things. If they could avoid sales professionals at all, they would. Um, that's because people put sales professionals in the box of they only want to sell something. That's why I'm a big believer in the fact that sales professionals to go to the next level have to be business professionals and deal with other business professionals that have great insights, industry experience, expertise, and can provide some useful insights to the business. Now, where I think this becomes tricky is that and I know you've been through this too, procurement groups love to, right, take away all the differences and boil it down to a number. They
That
send out,
is that is their job. They are trained to squeeze your margins. That is exactly what their job is. And many of them are commissioned salespeople. They're commissioned on how much juice they can squeeze out of the vendors.
they are. And I think for the most part, there's a special place in hell for all of them. But that
Sounds
aside,
like you've been burned in a few RFP
well,
processes.
I've had it both ways, but they really tried to strip apart anything that would differentiate you, so that you can all bid on the same number two pencil that's the same length with the same grade of graphite and has the same pink eraser.
Yep.
But
Be
the
a nice
world,
little vendor and fit in that box. Hmm.
yes. And what's going to happen is that AI is going to he's going to force us to interface with that. And that's going to help create a barrier between us and the real decision makers who generally are not the procurement people or
No.
sourcing people. They're the kind of that wall. What I did say too, which is going to be kind of funny, is that not only do we have to confront that, but what's going to happen when bots are trying to sell to bots? So
Next
not
level.
Yeah, not only do we as sales professionals have to confront the fact that we have to sell to basically you know AI type or a bot. I don't know what the best language is for that, but have to
Well,
sell
even
to a
worse, an
computer.
AI purchasing agent.
AI purchasing agent. Thank
Yeah.
you. It's
Oh,
bad enough we're going to have to sell to that or through that, but at some point, as people try to leverage profitability, they're going to ask, "Why do I need X number of sales professionals? We can automate that and have our own AI sales professional." So it's really got us in an interesting place trying to figure out where we can carve out. And with a lot of things, I think that this is actually can be a really good thing, in the sense that how most people get upset during an economic downturn. Like remember back in the day before everybody was buying homes, right? And it was easy. There were professional realtors. And then all of a sudden, everybody could sell a house in a day if you just put a for sale sign, and it flooded the the industry with all these kind of weekend warriors. Everybody wanted to be in real estate sales. Then
yep.
the things turned, and I don't know what the percentage, but say half the people then went back to whatever it is that they were doing before, and it left really the people who had the skill set, had the network, had the knowledge. I think that with things like this, it will sift through the people who really don't belong in sales, people who consider themselves not business professionals, but estimators or price providers or something else. that's really not going to add a tremendous amount of value. And it's going to let those people who are really the ultra high performers do even better because it's going to clear the field. It's going to clean the herd, if you will. What do you think?
Oh
Is
my
that
goodness. I completely agree. In fact, as I'm working on my next book, that's kind of one of the core thesis points that has been rattling around in my mind. And I think of it like, um, and I it's one of my favorite parts of the book is where I talk about an earthquake. There was an earthquake in Turkey. Was it almost 20 years ago now? Anyway, there was an earthquake in Turkey, and there was an olive grove. This was just a few years ago, and it was an olive grove where you had really old olive trees that were growing right next to each other. And in a matter of minutes, all of a sudden, they were on the other side of a chasm from each other because the earth split open. And all of a sudden, these trees that had been together for decades were across this chasm from each other. And I think that there's been a major disruption. Every time there is a major disruption, we see something kind of like that where things that used to be meshed together no longer are. And I think one of the things that we're noticing is um, back in the 20th century, there were all different kinds of sales: transactional, complex, simple, long cycle, short, etc. Um, but with the advent of the internet didn't kill the salesperson. Again, they've been waiting for the death of the salesman for a very, very long time, and it still hasn't arrived yet. And in my opinion, it never will, because the internet may have eaten the transactional sale, but there is and always will be a complex sale. So if what you're selling is a commodity, truly interchangeable with your competitors, then the best thing you can do for your margins is to fire your sales team, because they're always incredibly expensive. And I mean, let's face it, probably hard to manage too. So, best thing you can do for your margins is reduce that cost, fire your sales team, and move to more effective marketing and advertising methods to get your message out there, because whoever has pricing power wins. It's Econ 101 when you're in a purely commoditized marketplace. So, if you're a commodity and you can win on a spreadsheet because you've got lowest price, you've got pricing power, you can live there, fire your sales team and win. But if that's not you, the only way you will win is with human salespeople, whether you like it or not.
yeah?
That is where you will be needed. If you are a sales professional, that is your future, is the human element. That, I mean, AI is going to be selling to humans, AI is going to be selling to other bots. Bots are going to be buying bots are going to be buying from other AI and from other humans. It's your edge as a company. If you have something other than lowest price and you need to sell it, a sales professional is probably how it's going to get done.
I think you're right. And I think that, again, going back to the idea that the sales professional needs to really be a business professional and be able to speak the language and bring insights that, yes, right now, AI is very good about bringing data. I mean, it can get data faster than any of us. And let's be honest, we all use it to different degrees. And, if I'm doing some research, sometimes it's just faster to type in a question and get data, and I'll ask it to provide the sources. So then I can go to the sources and then do my own due diligence. Um, I'm always careful, and I caution people. I said, be careful. Don't be like that attorney. I don't know if you heard about that attorney.
Yes.
Who,
Yes, my
who,
husband's an attorney, so he heard about that story so fast. Like
yeah,
the
wasn't it
AI,
amazing?
the
Yeah.
AI did exactly what it thought it should do. It provide the thing, and apparently it didn't know to not make things up.
Make things up. Now, remember, AI never lies. It has hallucinations, which I think is very interesting, the way they've even come up with a word to placate the fact that it made a mistake. And it's interesting. But really, I think there's a lot of ways to use that as a tool as a sales professional to be even a more thoughtful business professional. So when you're interfacing with other executives and you're interfacing with other people, you don't ask the 101 question. Back in the day when I was in sales, your father will probably tell you this. We didn't have any internet. We didn't have any capability. You'd go and you'd meet with somebody for the first time, and going through, you'd be looking at their office trying to find that picture of them sailing, so you could ask something about their background. If you were to do
Yes.
that today, they would throw you out of the building, and rightfully so. People expect that you show up and having done research, and
Yes.
the research you've done is not to make um, I don't want to say useless small talk, but but rather that you offer some insights based on their situation, their industry, where you offer assistance, and to bring to the surface that you're prepared. You know, my father used to tell me, and I just used this at the event that I was at. You know, proper planning prevents piss poor performance, and even
Say that five
today,
times fast.
yeah, no, I can't. I can barely get it out the one time without tripping over it. Um, but the funny thing is that even with all these great research tools, how many sales professionals? And I asked the room of about, I think there were about 125 to 140 people there. How many people really prepare intentionally for an appointment, and most importantly, for a first appointment? I'm sure your group talks about this as well, right? This is nothing new. And even though you talk about it all the time, you ask people who's doing it. What kind of answers do you get, Jennica? I mean, you've done that. What do they say?
Yes, we ask them questions because they'll ask us for help. I've got a really big meeting coming up. What am I doing? What should I do here, here? And then we'll just start asking some of the basic questions. And they're like, oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. Okay. You
And
may want to look into
they
that.
haven't done any research. And I'm not talking about in the lobby while you're waiting for the elevator to come and doing a Google search. I'm talking about taking some time. You know, this is the funny thing. I don't know. I'm going to go down a little rabbit hole, but it connects if it's okay. Otherwise,
Absolutely. We do a lot
we'll
of those
just
here.
edit it out. It'll be okay. So, what would you like to know the secret to sales success? Would you like me to tell you the secret?
Yes, please, Vince.
Okay. And I do this with different groups, and I'll say the secret to sales success is there's no secret. If you think about any particular profession that's had more books written, more seminars, more training classes, I'm hard pressed to think of anything. And I said it really boils down to one thing. The difference between your ultra high performers, your people who excel, and everybody else is that your ultra high performers do all the little things well that nobody else wants to do.
Oh,
Do you agree or
yes. Oh my goodness. I'm thinking back to, I mean, we've seen a lot at
yeah,
Slattery.
yeah.
We've worked with over 2,000 companies, and I'm thinking back, I mean, all the way through my childhood, the people that we saw who excelled, who really stand above the crowd. They're not doing necessarily rocket science or anything incredibly convoluted or unknown. You're right. It's not a secret.
See, let's go back to the handwritten notes. Remember we were talking about the notes?
Yes. Oh,
Isn't that
perfect example.
isn't that a very so you I come and I meet with you for the first time. It doesn't matter what I'm trying to, sell per se, but I meet with you for the first time. We have a nice, and we're going to have hopefully some future interaction. And I take a whole 5 minutes to write down just a very three, four, 5 sentence thank you card. I put your address on it, handwrite it, and I put a stamp. I don't laser printer it on, and I don't run
No,
it through the postage machine. I use a stamp, and you receive it. Are you telling me that that doesn't resonate just a little bit where somebody goes, somebody took the time to write a note, address the envelope, put a stamp, and find that blue box that makes it go from here to there?
you will not be forgotten.
No. But how many people do that? How many sales
Right.
professionals do that? What percent? I don't know. I know I'm asking it as a rhetorical. I don't mean to do that. But we both, I think, have enough real world experience to know that that number is small.
Yeah.
It's not half. I don't
Right.
know what it is, but it's small. People who do that consistently. The same way with preparing for a first appointment. Use AI to do research.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think it's great to if you're meeting with Joe Smith at ABC Corporation, why not plug in and ask it? Say, hey, I sell widgets. I'm meeting with Joe Smith from ABC Corporation. Based on their industry, based on the company, What are two or three things that you would think Joe, in the capacity as the chief operating officer, would have on his mind?
Right.
Give it, let it kind of prime the well, and then you can look at that and then maybe do some more research and try to find some ways to elevate the conversation and go in there and be prepared. I have a great friend who, God, he is brilliant. I mean, he's excellent.
Oh,
He
those people are
says
so fun.
he says when you go in on that call, you don't have to hit the bullseye, but you have to get the arrows somewhere on the target. You gotta be on the target, and that earns you the right for the person to go. Here's somebody who's a professional. Here's somebody who's prepared. Here's somebody, if I invest some time chatting with, I will get value. As compared to a person who says, "Oh, tell me about your business, your concerns, and what's going on, so I can sell you something." Right?
Right, right. Exactly. It's a wildly different approach.
It is.
Wildly different. So I have to then ask the next question, which
Sure.
is the I mean, as you and I know, humans are necessary to human interaction. And when you're in the marketplace trying to get somebody else to change their behavior and adopt whatever it is you are selling in the marketplace, if you're a founder, if you're a CEO, whatever, you are ultimately asking people to change their behavior. And if you're not the one out in the marketplace doing that, you probably have humans on your sales team who are doing that, whether you like it or not. As you and I both know, Vince, there can be difficulties on those teams because humans are a variable that we really kind of can't control.
Right.
And it contributes to, I think, why sales can sometimes be kind of a black box of mystery where we're not always sure what goes in and what comes out the other end. But let's talk for a minute about kind of the dark side of having humans on the sales team, which is there can be some toxicity. And I know that when somebody, I know I'm looking back at my notes from our last conversation, and I know that you had a really good point that you kind of don't care how someone gets to the outcome that we're driving towards as long as it's ethical, it's legal, and it doesn't disrupt the culture. I mean those are pretty big requirements, but it's very simple. So how would you help? What would you say to like a CEO to help spot those sales professionals who hit their numbers in that, high integrity way versus those who leave a wake behind them that's at risk of drowning everyone else?
That's a great question. And I think it goes back to, and I know it doesn't always work this way, but in my speaking to business owners, I tell them that the way I used to hire was for two things. One was cultural fit, and the second was smarts. Now, smarts is not book smart; it's the capacity and willingness to learn. And cultural fit is this somebody who we have on the island who's going to support the culture that's there and make it better, or is it somebody that in the end we're going to have to beat to death with coconuts because they're just taking away from where we're trying to go. And to your point about that wake, it is a shame that sometimes you have somebody who, I don't know, sells $1 million a year, and that for you is fantastic. But every time they bump into somebody, they they drain them. They're an energy
Yes.
vampire. I
Yeah.
think John Gordon uses that term. They're
Nice.
sucking the life out of everybody. And then you have to ask yourself, is that $1 million in revenue worth it? Because am I losing more than that from everybody else who feels who's compromised because this person doesn't do their paperwork right, creates extra problems, not a good team player, whatever. Now, I say if you can get someone to do $1 million a year and keep them away from everybody else so they don't drain and put them on an island, then yes, they're worth keeping. But at some point, you have to look and see whether or not that person. And the sad thing is that person was a bottom performer. You'd fire them not only for that, but because they were a bad cultural fit. You would use that as your justification. But if they're above plan, then you tend to excuse it. And here's the trouble. And other people have said this beyond me. It's not what you say; it's what you tolerate. And if you tolerate that behavior, you're sending a message to the rest of the organization that it's acceptable. Otherwise, you're a hypocrite. right?
Yes, and that's so picked up on so fast by the rest of the team. It really
That's right.
is.
It
So
really is.
I'm so what would if a CEO, let's say they suspect they have a rep whose behavior is quietly eroding trust, maybe they're brash, maybe they're arrogant, maybe they're just a jerk, maybe they don't play well with others, what might be some early warning signs that they can watch for?
Well, I think among the early warning signs is how they get along with other members of the team and the expressions people on the team make when that person walks by. And if they roll their eyes and shaking their heads and going, "Oh, here comes Bob again," you know, unfortunately, he didn't get run over or taken away by a pterodactyl. You should sense that.
Yeah.
And I will tell you this, in all fairness to not just Bob, but to people who struggle. Some people struggle because they're intentional, and other people because they're really not aware, and they have a blind spot when it comes to empathy and their own self-awareness. And there are people, and I've seen this in organizations, who have benefited from some like executive coaching but one-on-one time with someone who helps them see what others see and make changes. And I've actually coached some people who were great performers, but God, they left not giant wakes, but wakes.
Yeah.
And to see them over the course of a year change, because it's so hard to change because people pigeonhole you into a behavior. But when you start to see that they're at it long enough that people begin to accept them as their new version of themselves, what a difference it is. I had one young man as an example who was always performing well, and he was very businesslike, but he missed the opportunity in the people that he worked with every day to say, how are you doing? How was your weekend? How are your kids doing? He at times saw that as, that's not core to my mission of selling or generating revenue. And yes, you're right, except that it was, and they didn't realize it. It was because you want everybody you're working with rooting for you and being willing to jump in and help you, not them, with their little secret doll and their set of pins poking that, hoping that you'll go away. And when this individual changed their behavior, and it took many months for people, the whole atmosphere changed around that person. People started saying, "No, I'll take care of that for you. I can help with that."
Wow.
He was getting much more, not to do this for selfish reasons, but it was nice to see the dimension change. And now it wasn't awake. This person was feeding the culture, was adding to what we were trying to accomplish. And that individual began to see that change, and it made it easier for them to lean into it and to realize that even though I wasn't intentionally trying to be that other person, um, now I can be the person I ought to be. I'll be the person that is the example for others, and elevate myself up. And I've seen that not just in this individual but other individuals. Um, Sometimes it's an awareness, and if you have people who are willing to change, you can do whatever you want, right? We are all told that to a certain degree. Um, you have to put forth some effort. So
Right. That's incredible too. That it's a powerful story not only because he changed his behavior, but that it affected the culture so much, and that it let him change.
it
That's
did.
beautiful.
It is, because it's one of the hardest things about change. And I've talked to people about this. I said, sometimes if you really want to be a different person, it's almost better to go and work somewhere else, because you
Yes.
don't have the baggage, and
Yep.
you can show up and be the new Bob and not the old grumpy Bob. You can be the new happy Bob who, is always the one to get cupcakes on somebody's birthday.
Yes.
You,
It's like leaving high school and going to college. It's like you could have a
yes,
whole new a whole new identity.
exactly, because I'll tell you, when you're in the other organization where you've been for say 5 years, everybody kind of has you pigeonholed, and it takes. And I'm not telling people to quit just for the fear, but it takes so much more effort to change the paradigm for people to look and go, is it just because Bob wants something, or is it Bob really changing? Because our safety mechanism says, danger, watch out, and
True.
we're suspect. But it can be done. Let me put it that way. It can be done.
That's a great point. And it's funny, not everybody is willing to change,
Right.
but depending on where they are, who they are, what the way they're wired, there may be some hope. And I'm fascinated that it was so effective to bring that up.
It was, and I'll tell you something. It's really crazy because it took me a long, long time to understand why people behave the way they do. And
Whew.
for years, as a sales leader, but also working, I was a volunteer firefighter, and I was a line officer. I
Wow.
did volunteer coaching and was in organizations, and you're always dealing with people in
Yes.
all different types of environments. And even when you control their paycheck versus having to encourage them to work for free, right? You're running into people and you're trying to figure out why is it that Bob behaves the way they do, even though you might have said to them, doing it this way would be better, or here's another way to think about it. And what I finally learned by studying psychology is that we all act in a way in which we believe is most aligned to what's in our best interest.
Hmm.
That's what drives behavior.
What do they say? They're acting in their own uh, rational, enlightened self interest, I think is the
Yes,
phrase my dad uses, rational, enlightened self interest.
right. And that's a
Yeah.
much much nicer way of putting it. Quite frankly, I would agree with that. And so here's the thing: they won't change for any other reason other than they think that this other thing, or a different direction, or a different way of behaving, is more aligned to the eloquent way you just said it. They won't change.
Right.
And you can jump up and down, you can be the boss, you can be the CEO, you can yell, you can scream, you can beg. They won't change until they think that that new way or other way is better serves their self-interest. Isn't that amazing? It's simple, but then it's not at the same time.
It is, well, there's elegance in that simplicity. And one thing that comes a lot when we're talking to the executives that we work with who are running companies, they may have a phenomenal solution that they're bringing to a marketplace, and it solves an incredible, obvious challenge. And
Right.
I was actually just talking to somebody earlier today, a client of ours, and I was telling a story about in another sector of the economy. We had a client who the solution that they offered to the marketplace, the technology that they offered, gave their target clients low hanging fruit that would add millions of dollars to their bottom line almost overnight with very little leverage. And they couldn't get anybody to buy it. And that's when they called us in because they were like, this should be a no brainer. What's going on here? And but it's basic human behavior. We hate going through the pain of change. We hate it with a passion. We don't like to do things different. I mean, ask anybody who's ever tried to do an intervention with a relative who's addicted to something. It's you have to wait until they're at rock bottom to do that. Otherwise, it doesn't work. We hate change.
We hate change, and it's interesting. I was reading this other book that said the potential benefits that may be derived have to be more than two times the potential pain of change. So if you're, just to kind of put it in context, if doing it this way is you're going to have to, it's $1. You're expecting $2 or $3 in benefits to even consider it, because if it's only a
Yes.
dollar and 50 cents better, you're not doing it, which flies in the face of economic theory, because we're all taught in business, if right, if you can make a little bit more money, it's certainly worth considering. But with human behavior, at a minimum, it needs to be twice.
Because we're never in a vacuum. There's always the status quo, the way we've done it. It's never a choice in a vacuum.
Who
Hmm.
was it that said, I saw it on a wall, but I know it's been on a lot of different quotes. It says that the most dangerous phrase in the human language is, "We've always done it that way." Have you
Yes.
seen that? Yeah, I love that.
Yes. In fact, that just came up somewhere around me within the last 24 hours. So it's very funny that you say that.
Really? Oh, that's
Yeah.
so
I
funny.
just heard that from somebody else. And it's so true. And it's like yes, there might be a benefit of me changing, but leaving what I'm doing right now is a cost. And so it's not that the economics are wrong that we'll move for that extra marginal benefit. It's that the marginal benefit first has to take the math into account that accounts for what I'm giving up in the status quo. And a lot of founders, when they hit the marketplace, they were armed with this incredible solution that says this will change the world. It'll be easy adoption. This is low hanging fruit. Nobody can say no. They're going to tear it out of our hands. And then they don't. I've just seen this so many times because that's often when we get called in. It's like they're not tearing
Well,
it out of our hands. What's going
there,
on?
there's a reason they call it the bleeding edge adoption, right? There's a reason that it's called that. Uh, but
Yes. Oh,
but I think that's very true, and it's interesting. You bring up a great point in which your expectation is that it's going to be a certain way, and then you run into human condition, and that's going to
yes.
be something that I think, um, and I'm a big fan of, is studying psychology and the psychology of sales. And in working with sales professionals about that, I said this is not it's not to learn to manipulate; it's to learn to understand. And one of the things that's so important is that as much as we claim to be these rational beings with higher level thought, we are emotional critters at their worst.
100%.
And we buy and make decisions based on emotion, and then we justify it. And I said it's the same reason why somebody buys a Corvette to drive 10 minutes to the train station. They'll come up that it fits in the parking spot better. What they don't want to admit is that it made their heart sing. That's why they bought that car instead of something that was more practical commuter car.
Yes.
They bought what made their heart sing.
That's a great way to put that. And it's so true. We see that all the time, no matter how good the business case may be. You're dealing with a human who, at the end of the day, is probably going to make the decision emotionally and justify it later rationally. When you were talking a moment ago, it reminded me of let's see here. You were talking about how if you're going to try to sell on a benefit, it's got to be at least 2 to 3x what it would be if it was otherwise trying to sell on a pain. I mean, it's why there are so many pain-based selling systems out there. There's some really interesting research that was done in the field of economics, or I guess maybe behavioral finance. I don't remember right now because it's fuzzy in my head, but prospect theory. Look up prospect theory. So, to all my listeners out there, go down that rabbit hole on Google. Look up prospect theory because it's a decision making. It's research that a couple of researchers did around decision making theory, where they put options in front of people and whether or not they took risks to get a higher reward. The results were very interesting. So I'm going to botch it if I try to describe it right now. So I'm going to tell
No, it's
everybody,
okay.
go to the Google, go to the Google
Is that
prospect theory.
Is that similar to the study that they did? I think it was in London with children with marshmallows. Did you ever hear about that? They did the
I did hear
marshmallow.
about that. It's different. It's
It's
different.
different.
This was more
Okay,
like adults and almost like a little gambling game.
gambling
But
game.
I
Okay,
but I remember the marshmallow thing you were talking about, where they would put a marshmallow in front of a kid and say, "We're going to leave the room. You can have the marshmallow now, or you can have two. If you don't eat it,
yes,
you can
yes,
have two marshmallows when we get back." And the way the human brain processes like immediate gratification versus greater later is fascinating.
yeah.
Oh, that'd be
I'm going to
tough. I
look
love
this up.
marshmallows.
I think this
Hmm.
is great. I'm going to look this up because I think I heard, seen something similar to this, but it'd be a great reminder, and it really speaks to the fact that one of the things that I'm a big fan of, and I know as we're getting close to the end, about the use of language, and we've talked about this before. Words have power, and it's always my emphasis to when talking with sales professionals is to use the word professional. I hate the
Yes.
word sales rep, salesperson, all that kind of stuff just drives me crazy because if you truly believe that you are on par with whether it's a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or any other teacher, any other professional, then you have to conduct yourself that way. And the other thing is, you have to commit to continuous learning. And far too many sales professionals go through kind of basic training, get a couple of years under their belt, and they don't see the value in learning.
Right.
And I think that's a shame, quite frankly, because your top performers are always learning. And they're not just learning on the job, but they're feeding their brains with information from other industries, other professions, other things, because your ability to really the future, when you talk about I read an interesting point. I think it was Daniel Pink was talking about the new MBA is going to be a master's in fine arts. He said MBAs spend a lot of time uh, dissecting and breaking things down into its pieces. He said, but what you're going to find is that if people who have skills in fine arts are going to be able to take things that are not initially associated and put them together in new ways that add value. Did you? I know you're excited.
Oh,
Did
I'm
you?
so excited about that. I got to tell you, because that is music to my ears. I have a liberal arts degree. I went off and got my business degree, but it was actually at a little liberal arts college, and I had to read old stuff. And the whole point of it was you you got to be able to put ideas together and basically be a better human. And in the world of AI, I was just talking to my husband about this a couple days ago, because that's a really big deal in our house. Is having I've got three teenagers, and so we're about to launch humans into the world, and I need to make sure they can human. It's kind of hard, and so
It
this is a very timely thing for me. So I'm writing this down. Daniel Pink. I'm going to look that up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because music to my ears. Um, it's being a human right now is more important than ever. Oh my goodness.
It is, and I think to your point about helping people learn, there's a misnomer, and I have this quote from, if it's okay, I'll read it from Albert Einstein. It's very short.
Yeah.
He said, "Education is not the learning of facts, but training of the mind to think." And I think that we've gotten away from that in a lot of situations because it's very hard to test how people think. It's very easy to test, do they remember something that you told them? And that's not what learning is about. Learning is about teaching the mind to think. And there was another great thinker who said, once a mind thinks a new thought, it expands and will never contract to its original size. And
Oh,
that's another thing that we have to do with younger people is
yes.
constantly challenge them to be thinking in new ways. And sometimes it doesn't work, but the act of thinking itself, rather than just relying on AI or looking at a screen all day, don't get me going, um, will
Right.
make such a huge difference, down the road for them. It really will.
It does. And I just being around teenagers a lot, I see this too play out where, I mean, it's kind of like in an organization, where are the incentives? Who said, show me the incentives and I'll show you the behaviors. There are incentives. And for young people for many years, I mean, probably for decades, if we were to look back, the incentives have been get good grades, move to the next level. And the goal is, a nice, safe, middle income position somewhere, and and kind of holding that. And I think even in the classroom, even if very good schools with very good teachers, there's still, the grade is the goal. The goal is the grade. And very high achieving. I know very many brilliant young people, because I'm blessed with these teenagers and their fabulous, interesting friends. And I can see these young people kind of get locked into, like, I can't waste my time on like learning it. I got to focus on getting my grade. Like, no, just take some time, slow down. You're being blessed with an incredible book in front of you. Like, soak it up, this is juicy. This is good. They're like, no, I got to get an A on this. I'm like, what? That, they can be one and the same. So it's
It
the same for professionals.
it totally is, and it's a shame to a degree that um, not everything always has a grade, and there's a lot of things that are going to happen that there's not really a grade that are very impactful, very meaningful, and we should think about that. We should consider that. We should consider the why. It's great to learn things and do things, but why are we doing it? And
Oh,
how can we be of help to other people and serve um, serve others beyond just ourselves. And it's tough. And I know that right now there's a lot of younger people that are struggling because what does the future hold? But I think every generation's had a little bit of a challenge. What does the future hold? It may not have been so readily available on your phone to give you the bad news, right?
Right.
Or to give you the potential news, as the case may be.
Right.
But these things were certainly going on with every generation, and I think we owe it to the those who are coming after us, whether they're your children in your case or not, is to help them out. Mentor some people.
Right.
Talk to them and try to help them see that the world is full of possibilities. There will be times where it seems a little dark, but it's always darkest before the dawn. So
It's so
let's
true.
remain optimistic because being pessimistic isn't going to help us any, right?
No, you got to believe it's a winnable game. You have to. Vince, you were saying earlier in our conversation about the person inside the sales organization who hadn't expanded his focus to that warmth and interaction with the team. You said something really powerful a minute ago. Not everything has a grade.
Right.
And I think of that young man, and I imagine he's focused on his outcome that is graded, the things that are graded for him at work, which would be his sales outcome, and his direct behaviors go into those sales outcomes. And that's what he's focused on. But to your point, there are other things that are important that aren't graded, that are worth the investment because they feed each other. We're not in a vacuum. The other parts of our lives feed into the things that are graded. And I think it's not necessarily one or the other. And you gave such a perfect example of that, where having him expand beyond just the thing he was graded on enriched that which he was graded on as well. And it also enriched the other parts of his life. I think that's
It
just a
does.
perfect example of that.
Well, thank
Man,
you. I've also tasked people when they've been a little bit difficult to get through. Is I've suggested to them that they go to their desk, they sit down, they take out a piece of paper, and I want them to write essentially their own eulogy. I want them to think about what people are going to say when they're in the little box there, and think about how much emphasis do you want them to put on the fact that they sold a lot of widgets, or they made a lot of money, or they had a 6,000 square foot house,
right,
versus all the other things. And it's funny because even the people who don't really write it down, at least just sit there for 5 minutes and give it some thought, they begin very quickly to realize that none of that's going to matter when you're dead, because you
right.
can't bring any of that stuff with you unless somebody's got a teleporter I don't know about. Um,
That's next.
yeah, that might be next. We'll ask AI to work on that. But what they're going to say about whether what kind of friend they were, what kind of parent they were, what kind of family member, all these other things are going to be the things that are going to resonate, and they're going to be the things that ideally people are going to remember, and that remembrance keeps you alive a little bit, right? That other people miss you because you're gone, right? And I don't know what's over there. I'm willing to put knowing for quite some time, but you're absent, but are you really absent? And that's also, and I talk to other leaders about this. It applies very much to leadership. It's not how people behave when you're in the room, it's when you're not there, what do they do? So, tying this back to your behavior or behaviors sets the tone for how people will not only remember you once you're gone, but how they'll behave and remember the lessons you've taught them when you're not there in the room to watch them.
So true. And that's a powerful way to think about leadership. How do they act when I'm not in the room?
That's right.
Wow.
And that's
That's
culture, isn't it? Right? I know you
yes.
guys
Yes.
probably preach this as well. Culture is not the rule book. It's what happens when there's no rule to be found. What do people do? Right?
Right. That decision making matrix that we all carry around with us in our heads, whether or not we realize it or not. That's a
Yeah.
very good point.
Yeah.
Well, it's all about being human, human, and more human.
Yeah.
It
We're,
all
we're,
comes back
we're
down to
stuck
that.
with that. As I like to tell people, I said, the interesting thing about people is they're perfectly imperfect. So
Yes.
you better understand how to work with people who are not perfect, including yourself, because it doesn't. Well, at least I haven't found it doesn't exist.
Right. Oh, and all those variables, man, it makes these organizations challenging to work in, challenging to lead. But what an incredible place to be challenged and see the rewards for it. So, Vince, I could keep asking you questions for hours, but I'm aware that I need to land the plane here at
Well,
some
thank you
point.
so much for inviting me. I've enjoyed our conversation,
Me
and
too.
hopefully we can here and there. You and I maybe can just jump on a call and share some stories.
Yes.
I think we have a great opportunity to learn from each other and maybe explore some things and come back and share some ideas as well. Be great.
Absolutely. And we should definitely do this again. This has been a blast. I need to make sure that my audience knows, where can people find you, learn more about your work, and get a copy of your book. Tell us where to track you down.
So, okay, I'll work backwards. So, the copy of my books are available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. You can look under Vincent Burruano, and again, Daily Dose of Sales Wisdom. I also wrote the New Sales Professionals Playbook. And if you're looking for a hint of humor, I also wrote probably my favorite book. It's Hey Coach, I Gotta Pee. And it's a collection of stories from coaching youth sports. Uh,
My goodness, that would be amazing.
yeah, you really get a sense of who I am and some of the humor there. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Vince Burruano, Burruano. You can also go to my website, Practical Sales Wisdom, all one word.com, and reach out to me there. And anybody, if they have a question or something I can help you with, I'm not the type of consultant that charges you the second you get on the phone. I don't have that mechanism for that. So if there's ever, something somebody wants to chat me up about, I'm happy to take that call.
There's that human side of you showing through again.
Dang it.
Oh, Vince, it's been an absolute privilege to have you on Revenue Unscripted. Thank you so much for joining us today,
Thank you.
and we will be back next time. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.